Chapter 4. Interesting introduction. The introduction to Chapter 4, Hamekashah is the name of the chapter, which means having a hard time giving birth. The following chapter deals primarily with the laws pertaining to a fetus that is discovered in an animal's womb after its slaughter. Based on scriptural source cited by the Gemara on 69a, the halacha exempts the fetus from shechita and considers it permitted for consumption by virtue of the mother's shechita. According to the prevailing Tanaic opinion, this pertains whether the fetus is partially or fully developed, and whether it is found alive or dead. Even if a viable young is found in the womb of a slaughtered animal, that young may be eaten without shechita. See Mishnah 74a. If, however, the mother died through any means other than a proper shechita, her fetus is forbidden, if it is dead or non-viable. It is considered nevela like the mother. If it is viable, it requires shechita before it may be eaten. So it seems like the only time that you can eat it without shechting it, it's if you shechted the mother and you found the baby inside it.
Can I ask a question? Sorry.
One second. A viable, fully developed fetus found inside a slaughtered animal is called Ben Pekua. We're going to see this name coming again and again. Ben Pekua, literally son of the sundered one. The sundered one. The name reflects the fact that the womb must usually be split open in order for the offspring to be extracted. However, the offspring is permitted to be eaten without shechita, whether it is extracted surgically or emerges vaginally after its mother's shechita. A biblical law, the Ben Pekua, retains its permissible status forever, so that even if it is raised to adulthood, it is exempt from shechita. In fact, if the Ben Pekua produces offspring, its exemption carries over to them. Meaning you don't have to shech the offsprings. The rabbis, however, were concerned that if a Ben Pekua is wandering about were permitted without shechita, people might come to permit consumption of ordinary animals without shechita. So they therefore decreed that once Ben Pekua has placed its feet on the ground, it may not be eaten without a proper shechita. In practice, then, a Ben Pekua may be eaten without shechita only if it is killed soon after its mother's slaughter, before it ever stands up on its own legs. And my recollection, I think I remember that one of the accusations by Yosef against his brothers was that they were eating ever min achai, or eating a limb from a living animal. And I read that it was his mistake because they ate Ben Pekua. They ate a baby that was born after the slaughter of the mother.
I have a question. In the first case, where shechita is not required, obviously you can't eat Aver min achai, so you would have to kill it some other way. You can't just take it, a live animal, and eat it. So what do you do in that case? In other words, when it says that you don't have to do shechita, wouldn't you want to do shechita anyway, as opposed to like taking a hammer and killing it with a hammer?
That's what the rabbi said. They have a concern that people would think that you should other animals, you should do the same thing. You should kill it without, not specifically with shchita.
Right.
And so they said once he puts his feet on the ground, then you can't.
How do you kill it?
Yeah, well, you have many different ways how you can kill. You can deprive it from food and it will die.
But,
You can.
and that's not Nevela?
No, if it's ben pekua, no. That's what they say.
Yeah.
If the animal died through shchita, the mother died through shchita, then it's permissible. Anyway, so let's do the Mishnah. If one slaughters a pregnant animal, the fetus may be eaten on the basis of the mother's shchita, whether it is found dead in the womb or alive. Even if the fetus had been carried to term and is fully developed, so that it is capable of surviving outside the womb, it may be eaten without being slaughtered itself. The Mishnah deals with a case where the fetus that was in the womb when the mother was slaughtered thrust forth a limb before her slaughter.
Thrust.
You'll see. Beheimah Hamekashah, an animal that was in difficult labor, very hard time, and the fetus put forth its foreleg from the womb and drew it back. Like with parrots and zerach. It says zerach, when Tamar was pregnant with the twins, zerach stuck his hand out, so they put a string on his hand. Put a string on his hand, he put his hand back. He's back in the womb. And then parrots came out, different baby came out, so he called them parrots. But here it says that the fetus put forth its foreleg, which means his hand, and drew it back. And the mother was then slaughtered. Mutar b'achila, it is permitted for consumption, because it was never born. Just his hand. Oitzis roishoy. But if the fetus put forth its head, afal pishir ziroi, even though it drew it back, arizeh keyolud, it is regarded as having been born. And the mother's subsequent slaughter does not render it permitted for consumption, though it is inside the womb. It stuck his head out, that's it. Even if it brought it back, it's considered like it was born. If one cuts off part of a fetus that is in the animal's womb, leaves it inside, and then slaughters the animal, so number 8, it says, this was sometimes done to ease the pain of an animal having difficult labor. In that case, since it is necessary or a necessity for such measures, it is not prohibited as cruelty to animals. The permit to employ such measures which involve a regrettable amount of cruelty is implied by the term choitich, literally one may cut off.
The mother's health always usually takes precedence
Right.
over the baby, even with
Right.
the human.
So see, even with animals, right?
Yeah.
How much more so with humans?
Yeah.
If one cuts off part of a fetus that is in an animal's womb, leaves it inside, and then slaughters the animal, mutar b'achila, the detached portion is permitted for consumption. Minat choilu minat kloyos. However, if one detaches part of the spleen or kidneys of the animal itself, then even if he leaves it inside the animal and then slaughter it, also b'achilo, the detached portion is prohibited for consumption. If he touches the spleen and the kidneys, the fetus is prohibited for consumption. Ze haklal, this is the general rule. Dover shegufo osu v'sheina gufo muto. something that is part of the animal's body that is found inside is prohibited, but something that is not part of the animal's body but a fetus that is found inside is permitted. So now you see what it means to thrust forth a limb before her slaughter.
To push out.
Push out, handle.
He pushed it.
Yeah. Pushed and handle. The Mishnah's opening ruling is qualified. Amar Yehuda Amar Rav Eiver Atzmo Asur. Yehuda said the name of Rav, but the limb itself that had been thrust out of the womb is prohibited, even though it was drawn back before the mother was slaughtered. If they stuck the hand, you can't eat the hand. If the baby, the fetus, stuck, or using the language over here, thrust forth his foreleg outside, you can't eat that foreleg.
You can eat. You can't.
You cannot.
Cannot. Okay.
Yeah. My time. What is the reason you're not allowed to eat it? Scripture states, and meat in the field, treifa, you should not eat it. A superfluous phrase, in the field. Why does it say basode? Boso, meat in the field. So the word in the field is seemingly superfluous. It comes to teach us something. Once meat has gone outside of its bound, it becomes prohibited. Now, Tenan, we learned in the Mishnah, Beheimah makshol leiled, if an animal was in difficult labor, and the fetus put forth its foreleg from the womb and drew it back, and the mother was then slaughtered. Mutar b'achilot is permitted for consumption. My lava eva. It is not presumable that this permissive ruling refers to the limb that had been thrust out. It sounds like the whole fetus is permissible. Why are you telling me that the limb that was thrust out is not permitted? The challenge is rebuffed. Lo, auba, it refers to the fetus itself, but not to this limb. This limb is out of the picture. Meaning you're not allowed to eat it. Auba, if the Mishnah refers only to the fetus, but not to the limb, my irya ichziro. Why does it specify that the fetus drew back the limb? Even if he did not drew back the limb too, the fetus is permitted. Why do you tell why do I need to know that the fetus drew it back? Draw it back. Indeed, the law is the same even though the fetus did not draw back its limb. But since the Mishnah wants to teach in its latter clause, what was the latter clause? If the fetus put forth its head, and even though it drew it back, even though it drew it back, it is regarded as having been born, and the mother's subsequent slaughter does not render it permitted for consumption. So it teaches in its former clause as well regarding a limb that the fetus drew it back. An objection is raised to the notion that the latter clause is the necessary one. So you see, since the last part of we brought two cases. One drew he thrust his hand out, and the second one his head. So once the head is out, it's considered like it was born. And then you cannot eat the fetus unless you shecht it. If it comes out alive, you can shecht it. But if it was the hand, you're allowed to eat the fetus, but you can't eat the hand, right?
Yeah.
So what's the point that you're telling me that it drew it, it thrust out and drew it back? What if it doesn't make? Left it out or drew it back in, it's still prohibited.
Yes.
So the Gemara answered because of the Sefer. The Sefer, the end part of the second case, is that he stuck his head out and then he brought it back in, right? That he had to say Ichziroi, to tell me that even though it was returned, you are not allowed to eat the fetus, you have to shecht it in order for you to be able to eat it. So the Gemara questions of a Sefer Ma'ika Mashman, what does the latter clause informs us? It comes to teach us that since the fetus head has emerged from the womb, this is considered a birth. Tanina, we already learned this in another Mishnah. The Mishnah teaches that it is possible for a firstborn son to be considered a bechor regarding inheritance, but not regarding redemption from the Kohen. He then explains. Mishnah says, Eizu v'choyer. Eizu v'chor le'nachlo ve'einu v'chor le'kohanim. Which is the one who is considered a bechor regarding inheritance, but not considered a bechor regarding redemption from the Kohanim. Right? You have to do pidyon haben. But sometimes you don't do pidyon haben.
Cesarean birth.
Yeah, it was cesarean, you don't do pidyon haben, but it's still bechor le'nachlo. And for inheritance, it says yakir los lo pishnaim. You got to give him double in the inheritance.
And he does still have to fast before Pesach, right?
So it says Abo achar nefolim, one that follows the birth of a nefel, meaning there was a stillborn, a baby that was born dead, lo aleinu, and right after there were twins in the stomach, right? So either it was twins and one died and came out, and now the second one comes out. So the first one is called nefil, because it's stillborn. The second one is now so-called bechor.
Yeah.
It's bechor for what? It's not bechor for pidyon haben, for kohanim. It's bechor for nachlo, for inheritance. Over here it says, he gives another example. If a woman got pregnant and lo aleinu, she lost a child before the full pregnancy. Let's say after 3 months of the pregnancy, 2 months of the pregnancy, she lost the child. It was her nefel. And then she got pregnant again, had a full-term baby, and gave birth to that baby. He's called bechor. He's a bechor le'nachalo, for inheritance.
My wife had the same problem. It happened with us. Same thing.
So you didn't have to do pidyon haben. How old was the baby?
5 months. You have to bury it, but the father and mother doesn't have to.
Sit you. Right?
Yeah. You need to go to the cemetery.
So Abo achar nefolim, one that follows the birth of a nefel. Interesting, the Gemara uses the plural nefolim. Nefel is singular, nefolim is many, and it translates it as nefel. But afal pishot tzorish chai, even if the nefel's head emerged from the womb alive, or that follows the birth of a 9-month, a full-term fetus, whose head emerged from the womb dead. The Mishnah implies that the reason the child following a 9-month fetus can be considered a bechor, at least with respect to inheritance, is that the head of the 9-month fetus emerged from the womb dead. But if its head would emerge alive, the one that follows, the one following it, the baby that would be born after this one, would not be considered a bechor even for inheritance. We see from this Mishnah that the emergence of the head constitutes birth. Why must our Mishnah teach it again?
Rabbi, if there's two babies and the first baby who goes out is a woman,
It's a female.
So the man. So
This I had this case, opposite, meaning I had twins, a boy and a girl, and the boy came out first. But if the girl would come out first, then there is not a bechor.
So you don't do pidyon ben?
No. But since he came out first, then we did pidyon ben.
Resgate do primogênito. Dinheiro pro Cohen, compra.
So the question that we see from this Mishnah is that the emergence of the head constitutes birth. So why are we repeating it in this Mishnah? If you will say that the other Mishnah informed us this law regarding the birth of a human, and our Mishnah informs us of it regarding the birth of an animal, and both teachings are necessary. For the law regarding a human cannot be derived from that of an animal. Since the animal has no antechamber before its womb, whereas a human does. And the law regarding an animal cannot be derived from that of a human. The choshev parts of ponim didei, since the features of the human's face are significant, whereas those of an animal's are not. What does it mean the features are significant or not? It says in 31, if the Mishnah had taught only regarding a human that the emergence of the head constitutes birth, we might have attributed this to the fact that the face of a human is the most distinctive feature. We could not have known that the same criterion for birth applies to an animal. Perhaps our Mishnah, Rabbeinu Gershom says, perhaps our Mishnah is needed to teach us that even in the case of an animal, the emergence of the head constitutes birth. The Gemara says, Honami Tanino. We learned in a Mishnah, Shilio Shiyotzaso Mikzoso, if an amniotic sac emerged partially from an animal before it was slaughtered, Asuro Ba'achilo. The sac is prohibited for consumption. Kesiman volot beisho, because just as an amniotic sac is a sign of a fetus in a woman, kach siman volot biveimo, so too it is a sign of a fetus in an animal. This Mishnah's ruling is based on the assumption that the emergence of the head constitutes birth, even in an animal. Since this law has already been taught, why is the latter clause of our Mishnah necessary? The Gemara concludes its question. All is well if you say that the phrase "and drew it back" of the first clause is purposeful, and the Tana stated it to inform us that because the fetus drew back the foreleg, even the foreleg is permitted for consumption. Tana Seifa Atu Reisha. We may say that the Tana taught the latter clause because he sought to strike a contrast with the first clause. Elayomat loy de Reisha davka veloy de Seifa. But if you say that neither the phrase and drew it back of the first clause is purposeful, nor that of the latter clause, meaning we don't need it. Regardless, it's not needed, there's no purpose to it. To say that the animal drew back its head or drew back its leg, then why must the Tana state it at all? Rather, it is not clear that the first clause was taught purposefully, and it means to inform us that if the foreleg was drawn back, then even that foreleg is permitted on the basis of the mother's shchita. The Gemara says, "Lo lo ma'ubo." Actually, the phrase "it is permitted for consumption" refers to the fetus itself without the foreleg, as we learned before. And as for the question of why the Mishnah says and drew it back, it is as Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said elsewhere, it is necessary to state this only regarding the place of severance, the place where they cut. Achanami, here too, we may say it is necessary to state this only regarding the place of severance. It says in 40, although the Mishnah's statement that it is permitted for consumption refers to the entire fetus left inside, the novelty of this ruling and its contingency upon the limb's return to the womb pertains to the place of severance. The place of severance refers to the point on the foreleg that is flush with the opening of the womb, which is where one would theoretically sever the leg in order to separate that which had been thrust out from that which remained inside. So it's not that it was actually severed, but it's a place where you might sever the foreleg. So if the animal stuck its foreleg and you're not sure was it the right leg or the left leg, so you cut it. This way you know. If you didn't cut it, it's still a place where you would, if you were to cut, you would cut from there. That's called the place of severance. That's the place that you would probably cut it. The Gemara again challenges Rav's assertion.
Then you're allowed to eat this piece, yeah? If it came out, the foreleg?
No, that's the piece you don't eat.
You don't eat?
That's the piece we don't eat. I'm saying if you never put it back.
Yeah.
You,
They just said
that you can eat.
Yeah.
So the Gemara again challenges Rav's assertion that the limb that had been thrust out is prohibited. So over here it says even though it was drawn back before the mother's shchita. So it's not so clear. Tashma, come learn a refutation from the following Bais Beheimah, if an animal was in difficult labor, the fetus put forth its foreleg and drew it back, and afterward one slaughtered its mother, it is permitted for consumption. So in this case, the animal had a hard time giving birth. The fetus put forth its foreleg and then drew it back. And afterward one slaughtered its mother, mutar b'achila. And this is common because the guy might think that the animal will die due to the labor, yeah. So he shechted. Mutar b'achila, it is permitted for consumption. If one slaughtered its mother while the foreleg protruded, meaning the foreleg was outside, and afterward it drew it back, also b'achila, it is prohibited for consumption. He put forth its foreleg, and one severed it, and afterward he slaughtered its mother. No, it says it's also. That which is outside the amputated limb is tummy and prohibited for consumption. Whereas that which is inside, the remainder of the fetus is toher and permitted for consumption. If one slaughtered its mother while the foreleg protruded, and afterward he severed the foreleg. Aboso magan nevelo. The flesh of the fetus and the mother is tameh on account of contact with nevela. Div Rabbi Meir. These are the words of Rabbi Meir. Sages say the flesh is tameh, meat is tameh, on account of contact with a slaughtered treifa. Ketoni mia reisha. At any rate, the Brisa teaches in its first clause, if the fetus put forth its foreleg and drew it back, and afterward one slaughtered its mother, mutar be'achilo, it is permitted for consumption. Ma'elav ha'ever, is it not presumable that this refers to the limb that had been thrust out? The challenge is rejected. Loi ha'ubo. This refers to the fetus itself, but not to this limb. Ha'ubo, if the Brisa refers only to the fetus, but not to the limb, ema seifa, consider the latter clause. Shochat tesim v'achakir ziroi. If one slaughtered its mother and afterward it drew back its foreleg, also b'achila, is prohibited for consumption. V'ya'ubo. And if the Brisa refers to the fetus itself, why is it prohibited? So we're obviously speaking about the limb that was pushed out. It is necessary, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said elsewhere, it is necessary to state this only regarding the place of severance. Hachanami here too, we may say, it is necessary to state this only regarding the place of severance. If you look at number 4, it says, when the Brisa states in the first case, it is permitted for consumption, and in the latter case, it is prohibited. The first case was the leg, the foreleg, that was thrust out. In the second case, the latter case, was the case of the head. It refers specifically to the portion of the limb that was precisely aligned with the opening of the womb. The Gemara proceeds with yet another challenge to Rab. Eini, it is indeed so that even though the limb was drawn back, it remains prohibited. But when Avimi came from a place called Bechozoi, he came and brought with him the following Brisa. Parso, Hechzer Eicho, a hoof that is drew back, you may eat the bottom part of the feet, right? The hoof. Prosois, hooves that it drew back, you may eat. My love, is it not obvious that this means if the fetus thrust out and drew back a hoof, you may eat that hoof.
Can I say something? Don't we know in general that hoofs and horns and sinews are not included, in other words, in the dinim of kashrus, in other words, the person anyway could eat hoofs if they wanted to, in other words, that they don't require, in other words, the same stringencies that we apply to the meat or to shechita.
No, because Rav said, it says, one may eat only the fetus itself, but not the hoof that was thrust out and drawn back. So is it okay to eat it or it's not? So Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said, Loi. Loi nitzricho al makim chatach. it is necessary to state this only regarding the place of severance. It says in 7, the Bryce actually refers to the part of the fetus that had remained inside the womb. And the novelty of its exposition is that if the limb was drawn back, even the place of severance is rendered permissible by the mother's shchita. One might have thought that since the place of severance was not completely enclosed by the womb, it is deemed to have gone outside of its bounds and can no longer be permitted. The Pasuk informs us that this is not so. Since the place of severance did not completely leave the womb, it is not regarded as having gone outside of its bounds. The Brisa means the following. If the fetus that had thrust out 2 limbs drew back one of them, you may eat the place of severance of only that limb, but if it drew back both limbs, you may eat the place of severance of both of them. It is interesting that Rav Nachman said this explanation in regard to the Brisa rather than the Mishnah, necessitating the Gemara above to say that his exposition may also be applied to the Mishnah. Why did he not say it directly in regard to the Mishnah? For that you have to look at Chasam Sefer and Chosin Yeshuos for resolution on this matter. There's an interesting picture over here, the different types of hooves, animal hooves, camel, cow, and sheep. The Gemara says, "Loi."
Just to make clear, so if the animal put the head out and put the head again back, you shech the mother, and you're not allowed to eat the head now of the fetus.
The whole fetus you can't eat, unless the fetus is alive, and then you need to shecht it.
Okay.
It's considered like, the idea is that once the head the head comes out, you have to shecht it.
Okay.
It's born.
And if it's a leg, and put again the leg inside,
that leg cannot be eaten.
Only that leg.
Yeah.
Okay.
The place of severance we learned now can be eaten. The place where you would cut, you don't have to cut more and say, oh, this little piece came out, or that part you don't. But the rest of the leg you cannot eat.
Okay.
The Gemara says, "Lo echad lemokim chatach." One person comes to permit the place of severance, v'echad lekolot b'mei po, and the other one comes to permit a creature with joined hooves that is discovered in the womb of a cow. It says this applies in the case where a fetus whose hooves are not split is found in the womb of a slaughtered cow.
Here's a picture.
Yeah, we have a picture. Yeah, we also.
It doesn't have any division. Doesn't have any
Right. A
separation.
camel has. It says a camel, his hooves are partially split,
Right.
not completely split. Chad lemokim chatach. One person comes to permit the place of severance, v'chad lekolut b'mei po, and the other one comes to permit a creature with joint hooves that is discovered in the womb of a cow. V'alibed Rabbi Shimon, and the Brisa is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. Damar Rabbi Shimon, kolut ben paro asu. A creature with joint hooves that is born to a cow or another kosher animal is prohibited for consumption. The Brisa expounds the word hoof as teaching that this applies only where the creature emerged from the womb into the open air. But if it is discovered in its mother's womb after she is slaughtered, it is permitted for consumption. So far, the Gemara tells us something very interesting. If you're shechting an animal and you find a baby, a fetus, with a unsplit hooves,
Right.
you're not allowed to eat it, right? It says, when are you not allowed to eat it? If it already went out, if it came out. If it's still inside, you're allowed to eat it even if it has unsplit hooves. So what do we learn from it? That if a cow, a kosher animal, gives birth to a non-kosher animal, I don't know how, but let's say it happened. Maybe a cow mated with a camel or with a horse, and some kind of mutation came out. You're not allowed to eat it. So we follow the signs that the Torah gave us. It has to chew its cud and has to be split hoofs. No matter where it was born, who gave birth to it.
Isn't a mule born from a donkey and a horse?
Yes. Mule cannot reproduce though.
Right.
But in this case, what happened, you can ask the reverse question, what happened if a non-kosher animal gives birth to a kosher one? Do we really ignore completely where it's coming from and just look at the signs? Or we also look at, it's a whole shaila, it's a whole debate. But in this case we see that if it's in the womb, it's not born, then you're eating the mother, you eat what's inside it. But if it came out, if it doesn't have split hooves, even if it comes from a kosher animal, you cannot eat it.
Yeah, but this is what Yosef would have understood, right? Or when they were in that story where he said about his brother who was killing an unshechted animal, it's kind of referring to the fetus found inside the mother they shechted.
Yeah, he didn't know that. He thought, he judged them by seeing that they ate the fetus, and he thought they didn't shecht it. It was probably dead, but he said, I don't see the head shechted. So, having deflected all challenges to Rav's opinion that a limb thrust out of the womb can no longer be permitted on the basis of the mother's shchita, even if it is drawn back, the Gemara cites a dissenting view. Ula Omar Rabbi Yochanan. Ula said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Ve'ever atzoi muto. And even the limb itself that had been thrust from the womb and then drawn back is permitted on the basis of the mother's shchita. Ula's teaching is questioned. Amar le Rav Yehuda le Ula. Rav Yehuda said to Ula, "Veha Rav Shmuel damri tarvai ve'veratz mo'asur." But Rav and Shmuel both said that the limb itself is prohibited. How do you say that it's permitted? Amar le. He said to Rav Yehuda, "Man yoivlon me'afod Rav Shmuel umalinon ainin." Who will give us of the dust of Rav and Shmuel, that we may fill our eyes with it? Meaning, it says 14, I hold Rav and Shmuel in such esteem that I would consider myself fortunate if I could put dust from their graves in my eyes, to become enlightened with their wisdom. However, in this matter, I cannot follow their opinion, for So said Rabbi Yochanan, Hakol hoyu bichlal basar basar trefa lo yiseichelu. All things that have prescribed boundary were included in the injunction, meat in the field, treifa you shall not eat. Meaning that if they go outside of their bounds, they may not be eaten. It would seem that once they become prohibited, they remain so even after returning to their bounds. But when Scripture specifies for you, regarding a chatos, offering that went outside of its bounds and then returned, also that it is prohibited, it indicates that without this specification, the chatos would have been permitted. This we learned in Zvochim. Chatos hu defort rachmanu. We learn that it is only the chatos regarding which the Merciful One specifies that is rendered permanently unfit by going outside of its bounds. Aval kol milei, but as for all other things that go outside their bounds, kevan dehodur shori, once they return to their respective bounds, they are permitted. Only in chatos it remains prohibited. Accordingly, if a fetus put forth a limb from the womb and then drew it back, even that limb is permitted by virtue of the mother's shchita. That's Ula's opinion. Ula's ruling is in the name of Rabbi Yochanan is challenged. When the Torah states, meat in the field, treifa you shall not eat. What does it teach? What does it teach by comparing meat in the field, meat that has gone outside of its bounds, to treifa? It is the following. Since we find regarding Ma'aser Sheni and Bikurim, that even if they went outside their bounds and returned, mutorim, they are permitted. It might be thought that this one, meat in the field too, is subject to the same law. If a fetus thrust forth a limb from the womb and drew it back, perhaps the limb can be rendered permissible by the mother's shchita. Talmud lema treifa. Scripture therefore states treifa, that it's not kosher. The Gemara clarifies, my Talmudo, what is the derivation? Omar Rabbo said ki treifa. Scripture indicates that meat that has gone outside of its bound is like treifa animal. Ma treifa kevan shnita v'shuva en la'eter, av boster kevan shiotzu chutz mechitzos v'shuva en la'eter. Chuv tadulu. It says treifa becomes, once it gets the title treifa, en la'eter is not becoming permissible. It stays treifa, remains treifa. The same thing, once the leg, the foreleg went out of its bound, it doesn't become permissible again. And that Tuvta de Ula, now Ula is challenged. Tuvta, the Gemara said it is a refutation. Omar Ma, the Gemara analyzes the Brisa just cited, since we find regarding Ma'aser Sheni and Bikurim, what do we find? That even if they went outside of their bounds and returned, they are permitted. Where do we find this? For it is written, you may not eat in your outlaying cities the meiser of your grain, Ma'aser Sheni, and that which you raise up with your hands, Bikurim. It is only in your outlaying cities that you may not eat Ma'aser Sheni and Bikurim. But if they went out of their bounds and then returned to Yerushalayim, Mutorim, they are permitted to be eaten. The Gemara introduces another version of the dispute between Rav and Rabbi Yochanan regarding the status of a limb that was thrust out of the womb. B'marovo masnu hochi. In the West, in Eretz Yisrael, they teach the dispute as follows. Rav Omar yesh leido levorim, Rabbi Yochanan Omar ein leido levorim. Rav said there is birth for individual limbs. Rabbi Yochanan said there is no birth for individual limbs. Rav holds that when a limb is thrust out of the womb, it is considered born, even though the fetus as a whole has not yet been born. Even if the limb is drawn back, it may not be eaten on the basis of the mother's shchita. Rabbi Yochanan holds that the limb is not considered born, so that if it is drawn back, it can be rendered permissible by the mother's shchita. So in Eretz Yisrael, that's how they explain the dispute. If there's something called leida bevorim, birth for individual limbs, so there's no such a thing as birth for individual limbs. Noting that despite the variant language, the opinion of Rav and Rabbi Yochanan in this version parallel their opinion in the previous version. My benai, what is the practical difference between them, between Rav and Rabbi Yochanan? Ika benai lemeiser miut ever shebefnim. There is a practical difference between them with respect to Rav's opinion in whether to prohibit the minor portion of a limb that was always inside the womb when the majority of the limb was put forth. According to the first version, which quotes Rav as stating that once something leaves its bound, it is prohibited, only the portion of the limb that actually left the womb is precluded from permissibility. According to the latter version, which quotes Rav as stating that there is birth for individual limbs, once the majority of a limb has left the womb, even the portion remaining inside is prohibited. Because the whole Ava was born. Even though just the majority of it came out, the whole Ava was born and therefore it's prohibited.
I wanted to ask you something practically that we learned before and it's connected to this. So if say you're eating strawberries or a fruit and there's a worm inside the fruit, in other words, since it didn't come out and it didn't, like the pasuk says, it wasn't sheretz al adamah, it didn't come out and walk on the ground, you don't have to check the fruit, right? You don't have to cut open your strawberries to see, and even if you did eat something that was inside the strawberry, it would be mutter, right?
That's what we learned yesterday.
Right.
And obviously today we're careful to wash and make sure that there's nothing there.
Right.
Because how do you know if it didn't walk?
Do we have to cut fruit open?
Because the thing is, there was also a distinction between a parasite or worm that came from the outside or grew within.
Right, it grew within. Right.
So how do you know? How do you know to differentiate when you? I don't know if maybe the strawberries that are growing very low on the ground. Maybe it came from outside. We don't know.
It bored itself in, right? And crawled inside.
Yeah,
right?
crawled, made his way in.
So are people noheg when they eat strawberries and things to cut them open and to make a bedika?
No, it's the issue with strawberries is not in the inside. The worms or the whatever is growing on it's in the openings. Like if you look at the outside, right. If you look with a microscope, you can see things are moving around there. So you got to wash it with a little bit of warm water and wash it with some soap to really get rid of. Strawberries needs to be washed very well to get rid of it. So you cut off the stems and you try to clean it very well. Other fruits can also have worms. guavas, there's a lot of worms in guavas. There's
I remember
what else can have? Sometimes the tree has some kind of a sickness, and it causes the fruits to be wormy.
I read something in Halacha that's maybe shaykh to what we're saying. It says, both in kashrus and in sofrus, in other words, you don't examine things with a microscope or with a magnifying glass, only what you could see with your eye. So, for example, in Hilchos Sofrus, if you have a negeya, in other words, the two letters are connecting, you can't see it with your eye. In other words, if you see it with your eye, you have to separate it. But if you can only see it with a magnifying glass, with a strong magnifying glass, that doesn't count.
Right.
In other words, so the same thing in kashrus, right? If you don't check things with a, I'm asking you, you check with a.
If things are known to be, we do. If things are known to be problematic, you need to check them with if you have a problem that is recurring. I know that in the Far East they don't have the quality of the vegetables, or not. Maybe the quality is better. They just don't use so much chemicals to kill all the bugs.
Like organic, right?
Yeah. So there's more bugs in lettuce and in vegetables. So they had a special table that had lights from the bottom, lights from the top, and you can see. You can find more things looking at it.
I once heard something I thought was very important. Some people say, in other words, some people say that you could, we don't hold that way, but you could go to a vegan restaurant, like a Chinese vegan restaurant, where they don't have any meat, or they don't have any meat and milk, and you can eat there. But this Rav said, but do they check? Do they make a badika, on the lettuce and stuff? They probably don't,
Exactly, and the same thing over here. You don't have to go so far. I mean, if there's a lot of juice places, and now they're making in Florida. There's juiceries where you can buy a juice, and in the juice they put spinach and lettuce and other healthy things, kale.
No.
But who tells us that they really checked it and washed it well?
But then again, a bug that's cut up, that's not a bria, right? A bug that's cut up doesn't have the same status as a whole bug.
So even if you transgressed only 6 lavin instead of 7, does it make still a problem? You don't want to have a.
No,
you don't know if it was half
that.
of food or it's still swimming there. What do you? We have to.
But
That's why we need
is it-
we need someone. We need a mashgiach to wash the. It needs to be a kosher place. The mashgiach to watch the veggies, to make sure all the greens are washed from bugs. There's some, unless they buy, for sure, if you can trust them, that they buy pre-washed.
Bodek, right?
Yeah, pre-washed, and there's.
Some people say the bodek isn't even, you have to still
Yeah.
look at it.
Still have to. Yeah. God gave us eyes for a reason, right? Yibalu le'divra imer en leido le'evorim, according to the one who said that there is no birth for individual limbs. Oitzi ha'ubo es yodo v'yachziro. If the fetus put forth its foreleg and drew it back, v'chozar v'oitzi es yodo v'yachziro, and then it put forth its other foreleg and drew it back. Ad shishlimoi le'ruboi. And it continued to put forth and draw back parts of its body until it had in total put forth the majority of its body. So it's playing a game, sticking its limbs and put them back, sticking. Now, what is the law? Mi amrinan hanofak leruba. Do we say why the majority of the fetus has emerged and therefore deemed to have been born in its entirety, or dilma kevan de hoda, or perhaps we say that since each limb returned to the womb without being deemed born, it has returned, and its emergence cannot be combined with that of the other limbs that emerge afterward to render the entire fetus as born. A further inquiry. If you conclude and say that since each limb returned to the womb, it has returned, and the fetus is not deemed born, consider the following case. If the fetus put forth its foreleg, and one severed it, and then it put forth its other foreleg, and one severed it, and so forth, until it had in total put forth the majority of its body. Now, what is the law? Do we say that the majority of the fetus has emerged, and therefore we don't have enough.
We didn't get the stuff yet.
We didn't get the, we need it.
Maybe you lean that around, combine with the what time you open?
12.
Lean that.
Use the app in the meantime.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you conclude and say that since each limb returned to the womb, it has returned, and the fetus is not deemed born, consider the following case. If the fetus put forth its foreleg and one severed it, and then it put forth its other foreleg and one severed it, and so forth, until it had in total put forth the majority of its body. What is the law? Do we say that why? Do we say why the majority of the fetus has emerged, and therefore deemed it to have been born in its entirety? Or perhaps we require that the majority of the fetus emerge from the womb at one time in order for it to be deemed born. A resolution is proposed. Tashma, come learn a resolution. Our Mishnah, from our Mishnah, which states in its final clause, Zeh haklal, this is the general rule. Dover shegufa asur, something that is part of the animal's body that is found inside it is prohibited. Usheina gufa mutar, but something that is not part of the animal's body, but a fetus that is found inside it is permitted. She'ein gufa la tuyemai. What does the clause with something that is not part of the animal's body is permitted come to include? Lav la tuye kehai gavno. Does it not come to include a case such as this one, where a fetus limbs were successively put forth and severed until the majority of its body had emerged? The Mishnah teaches that the minor portion of the dismembered fetus that remained in the womb is not considered born, but is permitted through the mother's shechita. We'll continue, God willing, tomorrow.
The question I had, I was waiting to see if it would cover. Okay, let's say the hoof comes out of a non-kosher animal and goes back in. So then, when you use shechita, we said we could still eat the animal, the fetus.
But not the limb that was thrust out.
No,
Right.
no, but I mean, it's not kosher, a camel, not
But think of it this way. If a kosher hoof was thrust out and you cannot eat it, how much more so if a non-kosher hoof was thrust out that you wouldn't be able to eat?
A
It's a kal
chazir
v'chomer.
has a